The beginning had no plan for death in it. When Adam and Eve were created, they were to live eternally. They had access to the tree of life. That was the plan. And I think Jesus looked and just thought, man, how far from the original plan and purity this has come. And I think God looks down upon this world today. And I don't know, I'm not speaking of a vision of heaven, but I think that groaning would be there still to see how far people have fallen, how far the world has been twisted, how the message of the cross has been twisted into get-rich-quick schemes, how people's lives have been torn apart by the drugs and by all of the things that the world has to offer that lead to nothing but death, and how it should break our hearts. But Jesus, He looked at that tomb entrance. He said, Lazarus, come forth. One of my favorite verses is just before that. And I forget whether it was Mary or Martha who, when Jesus said, where did you lay him? And she says, but Lord, he stinketh. He's been in, that's the King James version actually. The New King James says he stinks, I think, or smells bad. Very practical. He's dead. He's been dead. You know, things happen to the body when a body dies. But Jesus calls forth and he says, Lazarus, come forth. And Lazarus comes forth still bound up in the wrappings that they would wrap a body with. He said to those around him, loose him. Wow. Can you imagine what people thought? There were all sorts of people around because Lazarus was known and his family was known. They were still mourning. Then they hear that Jesus is coming. Jesus gathers attention to people. He comes, there are all these people around. They see this happen. Wow! It says that many of the Jews from Jerusalem, many of the Pharisees, believed on Jesus because they saw this. Yeah. You'd be impressed too. Can you imagine going back to the gravesite 4 days after your loved one was buried? And somebody came along and said, come on up out of there. And the ground starts moving a little bit, and they rise up out of the tomb. You wouldn't say take the grave clothes off. You'd say, wipe the makeup off that they put on in the houses, funeral parlors and stuff. Can you imagine what that would cause? The reaction that would cause? And because of that, it caused a reaction all the way to the chief priests in Jerusalem. They heard about it. And they had a big argument about it. Like, hey, we've been trying to silence this guy and nothing's working. And it says they plotted to kill him and Lazarus. Let's get rid of him and the evidence. Let's get rid of him. And so it says after that, Jesus ceased to walk openly. And it says he went to Ephraim. Now Ephraim is about 20 miles north of where Bethany is. Bethany's real close to Jerusalem. Ephraim is also up in the hills. So he followed the top of the mountain chain of the Mount of Olives and went up to Ephraim. And it's considered the wilderness. It says in the Gospel of John, he went up to the wilderness place called Ephraim, and he stayed there for a while. Just a few weeks. In Luke chapter 13, Jesus said to his disciples, he said, I need to go to Jerusalem. In another place it says, he set his face resolutely to go to Jerusalem. And he said, because it is not fitting that a prophet die outside of Jerusalem. Jesus knew exactly where he was going and why he was going there. And he knew the exact timing of why he was going there. And at that point in Luke 13, he says, oh, Jerusalem, Jerusalem. Oh, how often I've wanted to just gather you together like a mother hen would gather little chicks together to protect, but you would not. So the day is coming when you will be desolate. It broke Jesus' heart to consider that. So we come to Luke chapter 19. And it'll take me a minute because I'm in John chapter 19 for some reason. Luke chapter 19, it says, "Then Jesus entered and passed through Jericho." Now, to get to Jericho, Jesus would have come down the eastern side of the mountains there towards the river Jordan and then followed a path well known to the Jews. Along the river Jordan, there's a very low plain there that they would follow going south. And this was the route that Jews would take to get up to the Galilee from Jerusalem because they didn't like to go through Samaria. They hated the Samaritans. They didn't like to go through Samaria. So they would go up a different way rather than the most direct way. And so there was a roadway that went north-south along the Jordan that would bypass Samaria. And it went through Jericho. Jericho is right at the foot of the mountains, just across the Jordan, and it's still in the plain. And at that time, it was a very rich, fertile, and very busy place. There were fig and almond groves and olive groves. And Herod the Great built 3 big buildings or so there, a great palace there and so forth, right in Jericho. It was a happening place. And it says, Jesus entered and passed through Jericho, and behold, there was a short guy named Zacchaeus, who was a chief tax collector, and he was rich. And he sought to see who Jesus was, but he could not because of the crowd, for he was of short stature. He was a short guy. So he ran ahead and climbed up into a sycamore tree to see him, for he was going to pass by that way. Now, sycamore trees are very sturdy, but they're rather short, so a short person could climb up into it and sit on the branch and kind of get a bird's eye view, so to speak, of Jesus coming by. And when Jesus came to the place, he looked up and saw him and said, "Zacchaeus, make haste and come down, for today I must stay at your house." Now, this is really interesting because no other place in the Scriptures did Jesus invite himself to somebody's house for dinner. This is the only place. And in the original language, this isn't a, "Hey, Zacchaeus, I'd really like to come to your house for dinner." No, this is a, "Zacchaeus, I have to come to your house for dinner." Interesting. Kind of different, isn't it? So he made haste, Zacchaeus made haste, and came down and received him joyfully. But when they, meaning the multitude, saw it, they all complained, saying, "He's gone to be a guest with a man who is a sinner." Now, it said he was a chief tax collector, which meant he was like the manager over a bunch of other tax collectors. And the way it worked for tax collectors made their money by charging you more than the tax. And there was a certain amount that the government assumed they would charge, but nobody kept track of it. And so most tax collectors were hated by the Jews because, number one, they were working for the Roman government, and number two, they were cheating you. And number three, here's Zacchaeus, he's rich. How did he get rich? Think about it. So the people are going, Jesus, the pure guy, the holy guy, he's going to the worst sinner in the town. What's up? And then Zacchaeus stood and said to the Lord, "Lord, look, I give half of my goods to the poor." Now, that's not in the past tense. He's not saying, "I've done that in the past." He's saying, "I'm doing that now. I'm doing that now. And if I have taken anything from anyone by false accusation, I restore fourfold." And again, he's not saying, "Well, if I had done that," of course I haven't, because I'm an honest guy. "But if I had done that, I'll restore fourfold." No, he's saying, "Lord, I repent. And I'm going to give half of everything I own to the poor. But first, I'm going to make restitution. I'm going to make restitution fivefold, is it right? Fivefold? Fourfold to everyone. That was more than what was required by the law. The law required only under certain circumstances. If you stole from someone and it kept them from being able to eat, in certain circumstances it was a onefold or twofold, so forth. This is more. This guy's changed. This guy's life has just been changed, and he saw the Lord. The Lord came into his house and he went, "Oh man, I got to change my ways. That's it. I can't live in this big rich house anymore. I'm giving it up, and I've got to make right with everybody I've done something wrong with."